4 victims were found in a sub-basement in this apartment building on Longshore Avenue.
To know that something like that is going on within 5 feet away from me is shocking.
Chained to a boiler in complete darkness without food, water, or a bathroom, it's being called the Tacony Dungeon.
The 15th of October 2011, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Tacony County. A maintenance man is doing some work in a basement when he happens to hear some strange noises coming from behind the boiler room door. The door is chained closed, and fear immediately sets in. Before he goes any further, he contacts the police. When the police arrive, they make their way down a narrow stairwell to the basement. Once reaching the landing, they would later say the basement almost looked like a horror scene. Knives, chainsaws, tools scattered everywhere. As they moved closer to the boiler room door, tension filled the air. No one knew what to expect. The door itself looked almost like something from a butcher shop. A heavy sealed door meant to trap in cold air and preserve the meat. It had been built to contain any overflow from the boiler, to seal off the room in case of fire. As the police removed the chain and opened the door, they were hit with a stench, the smell of rotting flesh. The room was filled with trash, piled up in the corners. As the officers stepped inside, they shined their flashlights across the dark space, and when the light reached the far end of the boiler, they froze. 4 individuals were chained to the pipes, emaciated, skeletal thin, but conscious. They were able to tell the police their names and their dates of birth. The victims were Derwin Mecklemeyer, Edwin Sanabria, Herbert Knowles, and Tamara Breeden. To say the neighborhood was shocked is an understatement. Someone had created a makeshift prison, a torture chamber right beneath their feet. Each victim showed signs of broken bones that had healed over time, and deep wounds around their ankles from the chains. Seasoned investigators would later say they had never seen injuries quite like these. After the victims were given time to rest, all 4 were interviewed, and they all said the same name, Linda Weston. With that name, the police began to build their case. They didn't yet know the motive, but they knew this had been going on far longer than a week or 2, maybe months, maybe years, and not just with these 4 individuals, but perhaps more. A warrant was issued for Linda Weston's apartment, but before the police could arrive, she vanished. Inside her apartment, investigators found multiple birth certificates and social security cards, evidence suggesting that as many as 7 people may have been held captive at any given time. When the victims were interviewed again, they told detectives that Linda Weston had potentially committed similar crimes in Killeen, Texas, West Palm Beach, Florida, Norfolk, Virginia, and of course Philadelphia. Detectives would soon learn that the FBI had already been involved in some of those cases, and that raised the chilling question: why? Why did these people end up locked inside this woman's boiler room? Where were the other 3? And what could possibly drive someone to do this? In later interviews, there would be one specific victim who said it wasn't just Linda Weston who put him in the basement, it was also her daughter, Jean McIntosh, who helped lock them down there. The police began trying to track Jean down. They first tried tracing her through her phone, and later attempted to lure her to an area near the apartment. Eventually, they caught up to her. When they pulled her car over, inside was Jean, her cousin, Beatrice Weston, and Jean's children. Beatrice appeared to be in the exact same condition as the victims found in the boiler room, thin, bruised, with visible marks on her face and missing teeth. Jean was arrested immediately, and Beatrice was rushed to the hospital. Detectives soon discovered that Linda Weston had gained custody of her niece, Beatrice, back in 2001. That meant Beatrice had essentially been held captive for 10 years, suffering the same abuse as the other victims. Investigators were stunned that someone could treat another human being this way, let alone their own family member. Beatrice would recount that her mother had suffered an aneurysm when she was 10 years old, and afterward, she was placed in temporary custody of her Aunt Linda. At first, things were fine. For about 2 years, Beatrice went to school, ate dinner with Linda's children, and lived a fairly normal life. But around the age of 12, everything changed. One day, Linda told Beatrice that she and the kids were going out. and that Beatrice needed to go downstairs into the basement. Linda walked her down, leading her into the boiler room. When Beatrice asked, "Why do I have to be in the basement?" Linda didn't respond. She simply turned, walked away, and closed the door. As Beatrice stood there, alone in the middle of the boiler room, she looked forward and saw Edwin and Tamara. Tamara would later explain how she met Linda. She was standing in her neighborhood one day when Linda approached and asked if she wanted to babysit her kids. Tamara agreed. At the time, Tamara and Edwin were looking for a low-rent place to live, and Linda offered to let them stay in her basement for a few months. At first, everything was fine. They had food, they could use the bathroom upstairs, and things seemed normal. But one day, Linda just turned. She became something else entirely. And then, she locked them in the boiler room. Tamara's mother, Peggy Wanamaker, went to the police to report her daughter missing. But the police told her that Tamara was 20 years old, an adult. Meanwhile, Linda had drugged both Tamara and Beatrice, taking full control of them. If either of them ever tried to escape, they were beaten severely. She gave them nothing but cups of noodles to eat. By this time, a whole year had passed since Beatrice had been locked in that basement with Tamara and Edwin. Around then, Beatrice's mother, Vicky, tried to regain custody of her daughter. But Linda always had an excuse, saying Beatrice was busy, away at school, or out with friends. Desperate, Vicky contacted the police and told them that her sister was keeping her daughter from her. The police came to Linda's home, but when Linda showed them the custody papers, they accepted it as legitimate and left. Linda knew this was becoming a problem. She needed to act quickly, her solution flee. In the middle of the night, she grabbed Beatrice, Tamara, and Edwin, threw them into a van, and drove off to Killeen, Texas. This went on for years, until 2011, the day those 4 individuals were finally found in the basement. The police followed leads, contacted family members, and traced names connected to the 4 victims. And then, one day, they found her, Linda Weston, inside a home, quiet, calm, as if nothing had ever happened. Once she was placed under arrest, she did not give a statement. A lot of the information that helped build this case came from Beatrice. Most of the individuals who were captive had some sort of disability, learning or physical, but Beatrice did not. She was incredibly sharp and observant, and her eyewitness account would lead detectives to discover that some of the victims had actually passed away. At this time, Linda had 8 children in her home. Some of them were her own, some were her grandchildren, and a few were from parents that police could not identify. The children were well taken care of, well fed, well dressed, clean. The police would have to turn to DNA testing to find out who their real parents were. With the case escalating quickly, there were more interviews to be done. Jean McIntosh would be one of the key interviewees. At first, police didn't know if she was a victim herself or an accomplice. When Jean was questioned, she came off as incredibly manipulative and controlling. Beatrice was later asked if Jean had anything to do with what happened. Her answer was an emphatic yes. Jean tried to place all the blame on her mother, but as more individuals were questioned, it became clear that Jean was not only involved, she was more violent than Linda. She had helped capture some of the victims herself. Jean would be charged as a partner in crime. With the weight of the case crashing down on her, she eventually turned state's witness and revealed the truth about what was really happening. She said that she and her mother targeted individuals with lower IQs because they received Social Security checks. The root of this entire crime was money and greed. Most of the victims were lured in through deception. Linda and Jean didn't force them at first. They tricked them. Another victim would soon be identified, Maxine Lee. Maxine had been exploring her sexuality when she met Linda at a club. Linda led Maxine to believe that she was gay, and the two entered into a relationship. Some time went by, and Maxine eventually moved in with Linda. Beatrice remembered Maxine as being like a babysitter, kind, patient, loved by all the children. She helped them with their homework and cared for them deeply. But eventually, Maxine had enough of the relationship. She wanted to leave. That's when Linda drugged her and moved her into the basement. When Maxine woke up, she tried to escape. Linda caught her, dragged her back, and beat her with a hammer, breaking both of her ankles so she couldn't run again. 3 years would pass with Maxine being held captive. By this point, it was Beatrice, Edwin, Tamara, and Maxine. And then, Linda met her 7th victim right outside a Social Security building. Her new victim was Donna Spadia, Linda offered Donna her friendship once she learned that Donna was collecting Social Security benefits. Donna suffered from both mental illness and physical ailments. She was also diabetic. Linda invited her to the house, drugged her, and lured her into the basement. At that point, it became Beatrice's responsibility to make sure Donna was taken care of. Beatrice would later say it was clear that Donna suffered from dementia or another mental disorder. But soon after being imprisoned, Donna began to act up, and because of this, Linda stopped feeding her. One day, Tamara found Donna not breathing, with flies buzzing around her body. Linda was notified. She and her co-conspirators moved Donna's body up into the main living area of the home. Linda told the others in the basement not to make a sound when the police arrived. When officers showed up, Linda told them they had found Donna dead. Her death was ruled as natural causes. Donna Spadia would become the first victim to die at the hands of Linda Weston. With the death of Donna, Linda picked up and moved to another state. Anytime she felt at risk of being caught, she would pack everything and flee. With all this new information pouring in, even more horrifying truths began to surface. DNA tests came back, revealing that some of the children were Tamara's and Edwin's. Due to the severe beatings Tamara endured, she lost several pregnancies. Out of all of them, only 2 children survived, a son and a daughter. Tamara gave birth to her son in a bathtub. Jean took the baby and told her he hadn't survived. When Tamara later gave birth to her daughter, Linda did the same, taking the baby and claiming she had died. But later, Linda reported that she herself had given birth to a baby girl, claiming Tamara's child as her own. Tamara would end up babysitting her own daughter without even knowing it. Just when it seemed things couldn't get any worse, Linda and her captives relocated to Killeen, Texas. This time, they were renting trailers, no basements to hide anyone in, so the victims were forced to live in a trailer of their own. And at this point, Linda began pimping out Beatrice and Tamara. Eventually, someone in the area noticed what was happening and called the police. Linda fled again, this time to Norfolk, Virginia. That's where she met Herbert Knowles. Linda approached Herbert outside a shopping center. He had cerebral palsy and a mental condition that qualified him for disability checks from the state. Within a week of knowing her, Herbert took a cab to Linda's home and never left. From that day forward, he was her prisoner. As the number of victims grew, Linda became more violent, particularly toward anyone who dared to speak out. She made examples of them. Don't speak out or get hurt. One brutal event would stand out. Linda chained Tamara and Beatrice up and then knocked out their front teeth with a hammer. In Norfolk, Maxine began to act out. Her punishment was to go into the attic naked. The attic was lined with pink insulation, fiberglass that embeds into your skin and makes you itch relentlessly. Beatrice was punished the same way. As the days went on, Beatrice noticed Maxine growing weaker and weaker. Maxine went days without eating. Once weighing 180 pounds, she became skeletal. And one day, she stopped moving, she stopped speaking. She was gone. Linda forced Tamara and Beatrice to prop Maxine's body up in a chair in front of the television. Then she called the police, pretending to cry, claiming her best friend had died suddenly. Maxine's cause of death was listed as bacterial meningitis. Her death was ruled natural causes. With another death, Linda moved again, this time to West Palm Beach, Florida. That's where she met Darwin McLemire. The two connected on a dating website. Using her sexuality, Linda lured in her next victim. But Darwin had more fight in him. He resisted. This led to multiple beatings, and eventually, he was locked inside a closet. As interviews and investigations continued, the case unraveled in full. In 2013, Linda Weston was charged with racketeering, hate crimes, sex trafficking, forced labor, theft, fraud, and murder. In exchange for her cooperation, John McIntosh was sentenced to 40 years in prison. 3 other associates of Linda Weston received sentences ranging from 27 to 40 years for their roles in the operation. Beatrice would go on to have 3 children of her own, and by all accounts, seems to be living a happy life with them. Tamara gets to see her children regularly, with her mother, Vicky, having custody of one of them. Tamara now has her own apartment and lives independently. In cases like this, it's hard to see the good side of humanity, but it's all a matter of perspective. For someone to commit acts this evil to people, to family, is almost impossible to comprehend. But you can't let stories like this keep you mentally caged by fear. Until next time, watch your backs.